Hello everyone, my name is Sharon Sherry and today I welcome you to our interview as part of a romantic rendezvous lockdown. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming three ladies, Cathy Maxwell, Elizabeth Boyle and Lorraine Heath, who write great historical romances and just happen to be great mates. Ladies, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I start asking our questions, a little bit about our writers. Cathy Maxwell's enthusiasm for life graces the pages of her books and are the topic of the talk she gives to readers and writers groups about her chosen career. She's no stranger to the limelight. After graduating from college, Cathy started off as a news broadcaster. She later decided reporting was boring compared to making the news and joined the Navy. After a successful stint in naval intelligence, including a tour with the Pentagon, Cathy proceeded to pursue writing. Now she has over 35 published romance novels and 5 anthologies to her credit, many of them spending significant time on the New York Times and USA Today mass market bestseller lists. Several have been nominated for Romance Writers of America's prestigious Rita Award and have been honoured with RT Book Review's Love and Laughter Award, amongst others. Originally from Kansas, she now finds herself in Texas. When not writing, she is likely to be busy with one of her many local charities or packing her bags to research her next novel, though maybe not right this moment. Cathy's motto is travel light, and she enjoys meeting all of her fans all over the world.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
No worries. Lorraine Heath has always had a soft spot for emotional love stories. No doubt because growing up watching movies with her mum, she was taught that the best movies won't half make you cry. She's the daughter of a British beauty. Her mum won second place in a beauty contest sponsored by Max Factor, during which she received a kiss from Cesar Romero, the Joker on the original Batman TV series, and a Texan who was stationed at Bovingdon while serving in the Air Force. Lorraine was born in Watford, Hertfordshire, England, but soon moved to Texas. Her dual nationality has given her a love of all things British and Texan, and she enjoys weaving both heritages through her stories. She received a BA degree in psychology from the Uni of Texas, and she had no idea that she had gained a foundation that would help her create believable characters that are often described as real people. She began her writing career writing training manuals and computer code for the IRS, but something was always missing. When she read a romance novel, she became not only hooked on the genre, but quickly realised that what her writing lacked: rebels, scoundrels and rogues. She's been writing about them ever since, and her work has also been recognised with numerous industry awards, including RWA's Rita. Her novels have appeared on bestseller lists, including USA Today and New York Times, and she's the author of more than 60 novels. And to the lovely Elizabeth. According to her family, Elizabeth Boyle has always been a storyteller. That is, if you count the far-fetched tales she used to make up about her imaginary cow, John Clapper. We'll hear more about him later, maybe. Or the fictitious accounts she'd conjure as to who exactly broke the cookie jar. So it was no surprise to them that Elizabeth's first novel, Brazen Angel, arrived on the scene with a great splash, snagging the Dell Diamond Debut Award, and went on to win the Romance Writers of America's Rita for First Best Book. Since then, Elizabeth has penned 24 more adventurous and romantic novels, with many of them hitting bestseller lists, including the New York Times and USA Today. Her numerous fans call her work fast-paced and tremendously fun, with the most common complaint being that her books have kept them up too late at night reading. Prior to publishing, Elizabeth discovered that aspiring writers still had to eat and pay their rent, so she worked as a paralegal and then went on to work with a software firm as a paralegal, handling piracy cases in North America. And then, while pirate hunting, she decided that writing was more fun, and hence we have all of her books. Ladies, thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
So one of the things I'm always interested in.
Wait a minute, Sherry. Before we get started, I want everyone to remember that Elizabeth is self-proclaiming herself as always being a storyteller. So whatever she says about me, take it with a grain of, just like a grain of salt. Just be careful.
She's doing this because she's worried about the macaroon story. She's totally worried, but Lorraine is going to back me up on this one because she was there.
Lorraine's a storyteller too. I don't trust either of them. I go out and check the weather if they tell me it's raining. So,
well, just think about your revenge, Cathy. You could just make up stories.
You know what? They do everything right. They do. They do everything right.
Oh dear.
So anyway, you were saying something, Sherry?
No, not a problem. So ladies, I'll ask each of you. We'll start with Cathy, then Elizabeth and Lorraine. What is it about this historical world that really, really attracts you? Cathy.
Oh, I get to head into that one. You know, I like the veneer of history. I think that it kind of softens topics. There's a fantasy element that comes into it. I like history in general. I've always enjoyed books set in history. I'm a huge fan of Georgette Eyre. I like the humor that she brought to her books. And I also like the fact I write in the Regency time period because it's the beginning of the modern age. So it allows me to kind of play with ideas and themes that, you know, if I were to write about it as a contemporary novel, it might not be as much fun. And I do like fun.
Elizabeth.
I got to echo that, Cathy, because I look at the themes that I've written about in my historicals, like post-traumatic stress and things, and alcoholism and things like that. And there is a sense with history that you can soften those subjects and yet still make them relevant to readers today, but at the same time have that kind of veneer of history to tell a story within and yet end with a hope and an uplift, rather than, you know, I think that's harder to tell in a contemporary, though. I've never written a contemporary story.
Well, you know, the other thing I was thinking about too, about writing a historical, is I don't have to worry about changing telephones. I was reading a contemporary recently and they said they had a flip phone. And I'm like, who has a flip phone? I mean, you just, those little things, I mean, the horse is the horse. It's easy. I'm saying.
Besides your mother has the flip phone.
My mother had a flip phone. You're right.
Yeah, we don't want to know about your mother's love life.
And what about you, Lorraine?
Oh, well, I agree with them. I've always loved history. I love the research of it, particularly the details and the little things that you can find out about history that might not be general knowledge, or some of the things that I like to put in my books, because there's so much richness. Like I write the Victorian era, and so if I want something dark, then I can go to the beginning of the Victorian era, and if I want something a little bit more modern, I can go to the end part of the Victorian period. And so there's, with history, there's just such a broad, expansive canvas that you can choose from for whatever you're really wanting your story to convey to the reader. So I like that. And
I find the Victorians interested, Lorraine, like when they get, and sometimes in the religious groups, I mean, it's kind of the first time you saw branches of religious groups that were breaking off, and just, I think that's what's so fascinating about the era that you're writing in, because there's so many things that we take for granted in the modern age that have their roots in Victoriana.
Right now I'm taking, it's actually an online course on the history of the Victorian era, and we just had a lesson on all the different religious aspects of the different groups that splintered off. And it is really fascinating just to see how so much changed, and yet a lot of it still remained the same. And
I think I think a lot of it still threads into today out of that Victorian era. I don't think we've left some of it behind. But
agree. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then you have those dark and steamy streets with Jack the Ripper.
And then go through Ripper.
Good. That's gonna get good.
Have you ever done the Ripper tour in London? Have you ever gone on? Oh, you have nightmares for like a month. No. No Ripper. No Ripper.
But I often thought I'd like to do like a serial killer book, because there were serial killers during the Regency.
Well, there's always been serial killers.
Yes. I mean, exactly. There have been. Yeah. So, you know, I've always sat there and thought, I wonder what it would be like without a police force to go chasing after these guys. You know, how do you get into that? So, and that's my idea, and I just claimed it. So if it shows up in one of your manuscripts,
No thanks.
No.
No thanks. No serial killers. No Jack Ripper. Jack the Ripper. No.
I don't want Jack the Ripper either, by the way.
Thank you.
So how important is research? How do you do your research, ladies? Are you armchair keyboard warriors, or do you travel and delve in?
I think it's a little of, well, at least for me, it's both. I think walking in a place, smelling it, bumping into the table in the museum and, setting off the alarm and, just kind of that clumsy hands-on experience. But then you meet the docent and they start showing you the room and you look in all the cupboards, and you learn so much more when you have that ability to go hands-on into a place. Or archives. Archives are amazing when you can look at artifacts and handle them and read people's diaries and see those notes, and there's a lot of it now you can do online, but I think all three of us, started writing when it was more, stone and chisels. So we had to do more hands-on thing, which I think we were kind of lucky because we had to go there. I have to go to England. I'm very sorry, family. Goodbye. But
actually, I did. Yeah, I didn't I went to England as a child, but for researching, my first trip to research was last year. The first time.
Really?
Yes, and the first time I actually went to Great Britain was when I went with Cathy to Scotland, which was a wonderful experience, and it really showed me how much more I could learn about a place by being there and seeing all the different aspects of it. I think if you can't travel, you can still get a lot, particularly by reading diaries and journals and letters at the time. I think they give you a real sense of how the people thought and how the people spoke even. Sorry, there was anyway, but yeah, I think traveling can give you a greater sense of it, but if you don't have that option, I think there's still a lot available that you can research.
I think it's been marvelous. Just a second. Just having the internet, if you need a picture of a place or something, you can usually find somebody in that town that will go and happily take pictures for you or show you something specific and give you the history of it. And there you go. And where we didn't have that 20 some years ago when we all were 20 and starting out.
When I go into a new place, I usually like to hire a private guide to give me a tour. Mm-hmm. And that makes a difference because then I get some good stories. I get some good background stories, or and those are the fun things. Here's the legend of the guy that got shot in the back with a crossbow, and no one will ever give the name of the person who did it, and all these generations, and all this sorts of these fun sort of things. But as far as research goes, I actually use very little of what research I do, because ultimately in a romance novel, it's about the relationship, and relationships haven't changed that much over the years. I can remember there was a Diane Ackerman, the writer, once said that if you were to take an ancient Egyptian couple and drop them right into a television studio, they had no idea what was going on. They wouldn't understand all these cables. They wouldn't understand even the material. They wouldn't. But if they looked over and they saw a man and a woman in the corner talking together quietly, sharing a kiss, immediately they would grasp what was happening. And that's ultimately what we're writing about. We're writing about those very basic, true human relationships. Oh, come on, that was good. You guys are looking at me like, oh,
no.
All right.
We're like, how do we follow that up? That's perfect. So, okay, we're done, I guess. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Maxwell.
Like I even said Diane Ackerman, I got that name in. I'm not certain that's her real name, so don't hold me to it. But I mean, it was a great idea when I read it.
It is.
Let me ask you to cast your mind way, way back. Can you remember the first ever romance novel that you read?
Oh boy.
Because I am fairly new to romance, actually. Because romance was a genre that I didn't have any interest in reading, because I thought I knew what happened between the pages of those books. And I had to go on a trip in 1990 for business by myself, and I thought I needed to get a book to read. So I went to the bookstore, and there was a book with flowers on the cover. And I thought, well, this sounds interesting. It was Morning Glory by LaBelle Spencer. And I was about halfway finished with it on my trip. And I thought, I think this might be a romance, because I hit the love scene. I thought, this might be a romance. And it was so much more than I expected it to be. And after that, I always thought of romance novels, they're relationship stories. And I think sometimes when people think romance novel, they don't really get that it's broader in scope and it's more involved in what is happening between the people, and that it's about, triumph and overcoming obstacles to get to your happy ending. And after that, I was hooked. I really wasn't much of a reader before that, but then I was reading 3 and 4 romance novels a week, and I decided, this is what I want to write. I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know what I wanted to write. I thought, it spoke to me. So that was my first romance novel.
I got to say, it was probably like something from the 70s. I started reading romance when I was like 15. We had a used bookstore in town, and my mother liked to go there and get Gothics, those like, Victoria Holt or Gothics. And that was when like Bertree Small started publishing, and Valerie Sherwood and Rosemary Rogers. And there were a couple others that I really loved. And I would just read whatever came in there by the sackloads. And my mother had no idea how much sex there was in those books. She just thought they were just like her little clean Gothics until probably, I would say 10, 15 years later, she grabbed one off the shelf that, probably from my bedroom, left over from, moving out of college or stuff. And she was like, calls me up. Oh my gosh, what were you reading? How old did I let you? And I was like, don't fuss about it, Mom. It's fine. But I loved those old, big, thick books that they went from, the London to the Battle of New Orleans and back to the Caribbean, and then suddenly they were in Paris, and it was just amazing. And actually taught me a lot of history. I got called into the principal's office once. They were giving us a test on the Battle of New Orleans. And there was the teacher goes, well, what was so unusual about the Battle of New Orleans? And my little hand shot up, and I went, well, it was fought after the peace treaty had been signed. And the teacher was just like, and how did you know that? And it was for like bonus points or something. He had me hauled down to the principal's office for cheating. He thought I had found the answers to the questions and that I was cheating. And I said, no, I read it in a book. I've been reading books, I'm trying to find books and reading romance novels that were set during the time periods of our history classes, because they were great to supplement my history lessons. And so I had to bring the book to the principal's office, Love's Strange Desire with like Fabio on the cover and the whole bit. I just laid that down on the principal's office and said, suckers, there it is. And I got out of it. But I've been an ardent reader since I was about 15. So yeah, early.
I think all of us have been precocious readers.
Yeah.
I may not into romance, but we were in my library when I was growing up. It was 2 floors, so the children's section was in the basement. You had to go up the stairs to the adult section, and the adult fiction was right there at the top of the stairs. And so that's what happened for me, is I started going up the stairs and creeping up there. And of course, it started with A, and H was right there close to the stairs, and that's Georgette Eyre. So I started reading Georgette Eyre, but my mother was a huge romance reader. My mother belonged to all the Harlequin clubs. She was, and we would kind of laugh at her about reading, you know, I hear mom in her little books. And, you know, I was on my way, I was modern, I didn't have time to read anything that was enjoyable. And so I did get a hold of The Wolf and the Dove once by Kathleen Woodruss. And that just, I could not put that book down. But I didn't go on to read more until after I had my second child. And that's when I went into postpartum depression. I had the baby blues. And I went to my local library with, you know, the baby and the toddler, and I am exhausted. And I get in there, and there is a woman who shows up, and she must be 8 months pregnant, and she's got 3 little kids with her, and she has a huge grocery bag full of books, and she just plunks them down with the librarian, and then she goes off to the children's section. And first off, I was admiring her energy that she could do this. But the second thing is, and he starts refilling. He would dump the books out, and then he'd refill it with the paperbacks, new paperbacks. He would just do it. And then she'd take it home, and he said, well, these are romance novels. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, my mother read this book. And he said, you know, no, it's, what? And he pushed one towards me. He said, why don't you check it out? And I tell you, I read that book, and it was refreshing. It reminded me of why I was doing all those loads of wash, for one thing. Did I say wash right? Did I say it right? Yeah. My kids make fun of me because I go work, but it's wash. I did wash. I did laundry. You know, when you have kids like that, I had laundry, I had everything. And my husband would leave to go to work, and I'd have a stack of books because the librarian's now feeding me. It's like crack. And he'd leave for the day, a stack of books at my right hand. And when he'd come home, the stack would have moved to my left hand because I was reading so voraciously. And the house was a mess, but the kids were alive, and I was actually in a good mood. And so, so there's an uplifting quality to reading fiction that reinforces our values.
Yeah, I think that is the truth of it. And I think that's the power of romance, is that it just, you know, you do that, you know, you make a big dinner, and they all sit down, and because I'm in a house full of men, and they wolf it down in like 5 minutes. And you're like, you know, if you guys were billionaire vampires, at least you'd all say thank you. So you can pick that book up and read that billionaire vampire, and he says thank you, and you have that sense of, oh, well, you're welcome. And then you can just ignore the pack that you live with. But it does affirm it, because they are grateful that you're cooked them their dinner. And
it's the fantasy element, you know. It's that engage someone. I was at a book group one night, and a woman said she used to read romance novel all the time, but she stopped because she was married to a wonderful man. She liked him, but he didn't talk. He was the silent type. And she goes, when I read the books, the men in the books are talking. And I had this desire to just take the book and just beat him around the ears until he was bloody. And she goes, so I had to stop reading. But a book without characters talking would be boring. It just would.
Yeah, that would be.
All right.
Yeah, and sad for the author. How do you get all those voices out of your head? You know, they start talking in your head, and you got to write it down just to get rid of them.
Well, that's how I survived the pandemic. Yeah, I survived the pandemic that way. I've always got a lot of people rolling around with me. Yes.
I think writers were probably the best suited for a pandemic of anybody. We're used to working at home. We're used to just being at home. Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't have to go anywhere. I can just stay home and read and write. Yay!
Yeah. Sure. People would say, how are you surviving? I said, there's no change in my life. This is my life. You all are just joining me. Now, everybody take your bras off, and there you go.
I think we were kind of the ones helping people through this. Yeah, just wear your yoga pants every day. It's okay. It's good for you. Don't worry about the extra pounds. You'll get them off eventually.
All right. Having introduced coronavirus craziness to the conversation, I'll ask each of you, starting with Lorraine, have you developed any new habits, or have you been baking crazily? Anything different?
No, I haven't. As I mentioned, it's, well, for one thing, I had a book that was due, so I had to really focus in on that. But no, my life is pretty much the same as it was, except that we're just not going out. So I keep thinking maybe I should do something, because I see everybody is developing all their different talents, but I haven't done anything except I've been doing a little bit of stress eating. I start my morning every day with chips, sour cream and chip. I don't know why, but it's just like
That's better than margaritas.
Yeah.
And what about you, Elizabeth?
Well, my life did change because the kid came home from college, the other kid is home for school, and my husband is home working across the hall. So everybody's home. So it's a little different. I had to vacate my office for the college kids. So yeah, full house, all guys, and trying to keep food in the house has been a big challenge. But also baking. I found this great hamburger bun recipe, and I've been making those. It's so simple and they're so good. And every time I make them, I'm like, these are the best hamburgers. You guys all have to agree. And they're all just like, ugh. I've got tortillas up on the counter right now that I'm going to bake when I get done here. I just keep trying different things. Why not? This is a point in our lives where we get to do all these things and not feel guilty about them. Puttering in my garden, you know, it's pretty nice. You just, you take what life rolls at you and you try to find kind of that silver spot in it. And it's historic times that we're living through, and find the light in it. There's so much darkness right now, and there's so much upset and anger and, you know, sadness. I don't know about anybody else, but I mean, our family's been touched by the virus, and life is so fragile that you really just need to live a beautiful life every day. Every day, find that place.
Thank you. Cathy, what about you?
Well, I'm like Lorraine. I had a June 1st deadline. I did have the virus. I came down with the virus March 8th when we were all pretending it didn't exist. So that was kind of fun, because I was like, always a day, my symptoms would show like a day before they come on the news and say, oh, and guess what? That these, you know, you lose your sense of taste. And I think, got it, check, you know, this sort of thing. So it's been, that's been interesting. And, but I'm here, and I am, I hit the deadline finally, the June 1st deadline I hit. Originally my deadline was April 1st, so I did not make that one, but they were, you know, I work with a wonderful publisher. HarperCollins is a wonderful group of people, and they said they'll work with me. And so that's been a real positive.
So this is the opportunity for me to ask you all about your current release or your upcoming release, and give you a chance to tell our readers about it. Elizabeth, how about we start with you?
I really don't have a current release. The last, they're laughing at me. The last book I had came out in, I'm ashamed to admit it, 2017, 6 Impossible Things. I have been working on a historical fiction book that I had wanted to write for a long, long time. And it's just kind of taking a lot longer than I thought it would. And of course, I'm also writing without a deadline, so it doesn't have that same feet to the fire. But having everybody home right now has really put my writing skills under a microscope. And so every day they're kind of like thumbs on mom to get her book done. So I'm really hopeful it's going to get done in the next month or two and then be out. And then I'll have a release date and we'll have a big party. And, and we'll see.
In the meantime, she's got a phenomenal backlist. Phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's
Absolutely.
27 books there. So where do I even have my first one, Brazen Angel. It's out. It's 99 cents right now. There's the trilogy for $1.99 and it's on Kindle Unlimited. So with the joy of a backlist is that there is always a new audience coming up to come give it a try.
It is just a joy to find a new to you writer and then discover there's 27 or 30 or 50 books that you can read.
I know it. I found somebody like that the other day and I was like, oh, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. So I dole them out like treats.
And what about you, Lorraine?
I just had a release the end of April.
It was a very good book.
Wonderful book.
Role-play
It was
fantasy.
so good.
You guys have marvelous covers. Do you have any control over the covers?
And Lorraine, hold your cover up so that we can see the
Yeah,
cover.
come on, let's see the book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, that skirt. Gorgeous.
And
Let me
Cathy,
see
what
the
about
cover again. Let's see that cover again.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Hold it up again. I just want to see something. See, look,
So-
they are into yellow. See the yellow dress?
Oh,
Cathy, did you get the yellow dress memo?
no, I didn't. I didn't get I feel left out. You know, leave it. No, so I had a book that came out. You know, it came out this year. I can't even remember anymore. Was it January, February,
I think it was
March?
February.
Yes, thank you so much. His Secret Mistress. How old school is that title? And she's got a red dress. So yes, that is, and it's the beginning. It's the first book of a trilogy. That the second book is the one I just turned in. So I'm excited and
Yay. And now you're
I
free
really
to do some things.
All right. Now, I've been very, very patient, but I think it's time for our readers to hear the macaroon story.
stop it. No. I am never going to live this down. I will
Oh my
never
God,
live
it was the funniest thing. We were on book tour, and this tour was this book tour. We were in Virginia where Cathy was living, and so she was giving Lorraine and I the Virginia tour, and
putting myself out, making sure that they were feeling welcome and loved and secure, right? All right, okay.
Yeah. Now I will give her credit because we were doing all these early morning interviews and then we'd be up really late doing signings. So we were all a little punchy throughout this tour. And but she kept talking about this lunch spot she was going to take us to, and it had the best macaroons, We were, Lorraine and I were just like, this is going to be fabulous. Cathy
And
is
what did I say about the macaroons? What did I call them?
You said
Lorraine?
they were orgasmic. Orgasmic.
Yeah, orgasmic macaroons. Yes. I mean, we were so excited. So, you know, you get this lunch. So we go, we get in line, we order our sandwiches, we get our macaroons, they're on our plates. Lorraine very politely puts hers to one side and begins eating her lunch. Not me, man. I go right into the macaroon because, you know, it's orgasmic. So I'm not going to wait. And I'm like, oh, you know. And then Lorraine decides she's got to check this out. She takes a bite of hers, puts it back down, and says the classic line, well, I've had better.
It was so dry and so stale. And
They were awful.
They were terrible. But it wasn't that. It was like my friends looked at me like, so when was your last orgasm?
When was the last time you had an orgasm?
It was humbling. It was humbling.
Did you give them feedback?
Did you go up and talk to them at the counter? No, I think we were laughing at her.
No. We beat feet out of there. That's what we ended up doing.
Yeah, you're going to go up to the counter and say, these are not orgasmic. These are not orgasmic.
No.
Have you been back, Cathy?
Never went back. I was humbled. And you know, it's terrible when you take somebody to a place that, you know, kind of is indicative of an area. Like when I went to Australia, a friend took me to a place that had great pies. You know, the meat pies and the vegetable pies and everything. And so, you know, you take people to this, and this was real like Southern food, which is always a little iffy sometimes. A lot of salt, a lot of butter, a lot of everything. How they made such dry macaroons, I will never. I've got nothing. I've got nothing.
That tour was so funny. There was one morning where we had to catch that early morning flight to where was it, Kentucky or something? And it was a little teeny tiny plane, and it was like 5 in the morning, and we are sitting there still laughing our butts off about these macaroons. And we are laughing so loud that when they called the guy at the gate goes, well, I guess we all know who's had their coffee this morning. And there's the 3 of us. And then we get in the plane, and you can see everybody looking at the 3 of us like, don't sit next to me. Don't sit next to me. Please don't put those women next to me. And Lorraine was up front, Cathy was in the middle, and I was all the way in the back. They totally separated us.
All right. We're unfortunately coming close to the end of our time together, but before we go, I wanted to ask you, is there any music that you play when you're writing that gets you in the mood or keeps you in that writing zone?
So I listen to thunderstorms when I write. Like very early in my career, I ran across a thunderstorm CD, and it's what I still listen to. It just triggers that now it's time to start writing. You've got your rain around you, so that's what I listen to.
Wow.
I do a playlist for every book. I do a different one for every single book. And sometimes it takes a little while to get the right mix of songs. But once I lock into it, then I just play that over and over and over again. And then when I have to come back and do edits or copy edits or anything, I just put that playlist on and it puts me right back in that story. So Pavlov's dog sort of thing.
It's really smart.
Do you write to anything, Cathy?
I write to silence.
Okay.
I mean, after years of having kids at home and everything, it's like, oh, blessed silence. Nice silence. That's it. That's all
I have high hopes to return to that one day. Yeah. That was so wonderful.
It's lovely. It really is lovely.
All right, my lovely ladies, thank you so much for your time today. It's been just a joy to spend time with you. If I could ask you to hold up your sheets for me for our treasure hunters, and just hold them up for a few seconds so people can read your time. Yeah, just hold them up for me. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Why is mine backwards?
It's fine.
It's not backwards to us. Don't worry about it.
Oh, good. Okay, because I'm like, oh no.
I know. I had the same moment of panic. It's backwards.
No, I've done enough of these to know it was okay. Cathy, Elizabeth, Lorraine, thank you for sharing some time with us, and we hope to be able to welcome you down to Australia sometime in the next year or 3. Please let us know when you want to come down.
Yeah,
that'd be so much fun.
Thank you.
It would be great. Thank you so much, Sherry. And thank you for organizing this and doing this. It's wonderful.
Yes, absolutely.
It's an absolute pleasure for me. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.